Admiral Helena Chen pressed her palm against the viewport, watching as assembly drones swarmed around the gleaming hull of the HSS Defiant. Even incomplete, the warship was magnificent, a testament to human ingenuity, and more importantly, defiance. Quite a sight, isn't she? Chief Engineer Tarek Bishara approached, his reflection joining hers in the reinforced glass. Dark circles shadowed his eyes after 72 hours without sleep. Worth every sacrifice, Chen replied, not taking her eyes off the ship. Status report. Hull integrity at 97%. Weapons systems at 68%. Phase shift drive. He hesitated, still unstable. We've never attempted to bend physics quite this way before. Chen nodded. For decades, humanity had been the underdog in the Galactic Concord. While elder species like the Alterans and Drozics patrolled their territories with Class 9 dreadnoughts, Earth's defensive fleet consisted of glorified patrol vessels, the absolute limit permitted under Concord restrictions. The Concord Council claims these restrictions protect us, Chen said bitterly. Protection that conveniently keeps us dependent on their goodwill. Their secret shipyard, hidden within Neptune's rings, had operated for 3 years under complete communication blackout. Every engineer, every scientist, every soldier had volunteered knowing they might never see Earth again if discovered. An alert flashed on Chen's wristcom. Admiral, secure channel from Lieutenant Santos. Priority Alpha. Chen's expression hardened. Put her through. Security Officer Maya Santos's face appeared, tension evident in her clenched jaw. Admiral, we've detected an unauthorized transmission from Section 14. Origin point identified. You need to see this. 15 minutes later, Chen and Bishara stood in the facility's security hub, watching surveillance footage of a communications officer, Eliza Rice, accessing a restricted terminal. She transmitted our coordinates and partial schematics of the Defiant directly to Concord Security. Santos explained. Impossible, Bishara whispered. Eliza was one of our earliest recruits. She believed in this project. Bring her in, Chen ordered, her voice dangerously quiet. When security escorted Reyes into the interrogation room, Chen was surprised by the young woman's demeanor. No remorse, no fear, only resolve. Do you understand what you've done? Chen asked. Better than you do, Admiral. Reyes sat perfectly straight, meeting her former mentor's gaze. I reviewed the phase shift calculations. If the Defiant deploys that technology, the spatial distortions could potentially tear open dimensional rifts across inhabited systems. Our scientists are brilliant but overconfident. I sent my own analysis to independent experts on Earth before coming here. They confirmed my fears. Reyes leaned forward. You recruited me because I questioned authority. Now I'm questioning yours. Chen felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. Reyes had been her most promising student at the academy. Brilliant, principled, and unflinching. Not someone who would betray Earth without reason. Before Chen could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Proximity alert. 3 Concord vessels approaching Neptune's orbit. Santos announced over the comm system. Estimated arrival. 47 hours. Vishara's face paled. The phase shift drive isn't ready. The cloaking system is barely theoretical. Chen locked eyes with Reyes. Was this your plan? Force our hand. My plan was to prevent catastrophe, Reyes replied. What's yours, Admiral? Chen turned to Bishara. You have 46 hours to get that cloaking system operational. Pull everyone from non-essential systems if you have to. And the phase shift drive. Chen's gaze drifted to the viewport where the Defiant waited, humanity's forbidden hope. Lock it down. If Reyes is right, we can't risk testing it now. She looked back at her former protege. But we're not surrendering this ship. Too many have sacrificed too much. As Bishara rushed to mobilize his teams, Chen remained with Reyes. The Concord doesn't protect us, Chen said quietly. They control us. And what if you're wrong? Reyes asked. What if we're not ready for this power? Outside the viewport, Neptune's stormy surface churned beneath them, while above, 3 Concorde vessels approached to render judgment on humanity's audacity to reach beyond its assigned place in the stars. Alarms shrieked as the Defiant trembled under the strain of its first emergency launch. The massive hangar doors above them groaned open, revealing Neptune's stormy atmosphere and the stars beyond. Structural integrity at 65%, reported Navigator Elias Keane, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "We're barely holding together, Admiral." Chen strapped herself into the command chair as the ship lurched upward. Status of the Concorde vessels. Still 30 minutes out, Security Officer Santos replied. "But they've launched scout drones. Will be detected the moment we clear Neptune's magnetosphere." The bridge crew worked in tense silence, most of them stealing glances at the 2 armed security officers flanking Eliza Reyes. Chen had refused to leave the saboteur behind during evacuation. "Chief Engineer, status on the cloaking system." Chen called through the comm. Bishara's voice came back strained. "Theoretical status upgraded to wildly unstable. Admiral, I've diverted power from non-essential systems, but we're looking at a 70% chance of catastrophic failure if we attempt activation." "Better odds than facing 3 Concorde warships," Chen muttered. As they approached the upper atmosphere, a priority transmission cut through the communications chatter. The central view screen flickered, showing a panicked civilian operator. "This is Europa Colony Emergency Services. We are under attack by Vrel raiders. Multiple casualties. Orbital defenses breached." The transmission dissolved into static. "Europa." Rise whispered in horror. "That's a civilian research outpost. Over 3,000 people." Bishara's voice cut in over the comm. "Admiral, my family is stationed on Europa. My wife and daughter." Chen's grip tightened on her armrests. Europa lay in the opposite direction from their planned escape route. Diverting there would mean certain detection by Concorde forces. "Vrel raiders don't attack human settlements," Santos argued. "The Concorde treaties mean nothing if no one enforces them." Chen finished. She studied the tactical display, calculating distances and trajectories. "Mr. Keane, plot a course for Europa. Maximum speed." The bridge fell silent. "Admiral," her executive officer, Commander Ishida, spoke carefully. The mission parameters were clear. "If discovered, we proceed to rendezvous point Elta where." "I'm well aware of the parameters, Commander." Chen's voice was steel. "But we didn't build this ship to hide while our people die." The Defiant surged forward, breaking free of Neptune's gravitational pull. Within moments, the vessel accelerated beyond anything a standard human ship could achieve, stars blurring around them. 20 minutes later, they approached Europa. The moon's surface, normally pristine white ice over a vast ocean, was now marred by the black scars of weapons fire. 3 Vrel harvester ships, angular, predatory vessels, hovered over the main colony dome, while smaller craft shuttled between the surface and the larger vessels. "Scan for life signs," Chen ordered. "Multiple human biosignatures being moved to the Vrel ships," Santos reported. "They're selecting targets, Admiral, ignoring some colonists, specifically extracting others." "They're not here for slaves," Rise murmured. "They're harvesting." Chen stood. "Battle stations. Target the Vrel vessels but avoid damage to the colony structures." "The Defiant isn't combat ready," Ishida protested. "Weapons systems are untested. Shields are at minimal capacity." "Then consider this a field test, Commander." As they closed in, the Vrel vessels finally detected them. The raiders, accustomed to dealing with outmatched human security ships, initially formed a standard attack pattern, until their sensors registered the Defiant's size and energy signature. "They're breaking formation," Santos reported with grim satisfaction. "Attempting to retreat." "Not today," Chen said quietly. "Mr. Keane, intercept course. Weapons officer, target their engines first. Let's show them what happens when they prey on human colonies." The Defiant surged forward, unleashing experimental weapons technology that sliced through Vrel shields as if they were paper. The first raider erupted in a spectacular explosion that illuminated Europa's icy surface. Watching from her secured position, Eliza Reyes whispered, "What have we done?" No one had time to answer before the ship's systems suddenly fluctuated wildly, and a strange vibration ran through the hull. "Admiral." Bishara's panicked voice came over the comm. "The phase shift drive is activating on its own. The battle's energy discharges have triggered a cascading reaction in thee." His words were cut off as reality itself seemed to bend around the Defiant, and for one impossible moment, the crew could see multiple versions of themselves performing slightly different actions, echoes of possibilities that should never have been visible to human eyes. Ambassador Sophia Okafor maintained perfect composure as she entered the grand chamber of the Concord Assembly on Centauri Prime. The hexagonal room, designed to accommodate representatives of over 40 spacefaring species, hummed with tension. Conversations ceased as she walked toward the human delegation's modest platform. Ambassador Okafor greeted High Counselor Vexarn, the Alteran representative whose crystalline exoskeleton glinted under the chamber's lights. "How fortunate you could join us on such short notice." Sophia inclined her head respectfully, though she knew full well the emergency session had been timed to catch Earth's delegation unprepared. "The interests of peace demand prompt attention, Counselor." She took her seat as the evidence screens activated around the chamber. Three-dimensional footage of the Defiant engaging the Vrel raiders played from multiple angles. The human vessel moved with impossible speed, its weapons cutting through Vrel shields with ease. Then came the spatial distortion, a rippling wave that temporarily bent light around Europa, as if reality itself had hiccuped. "This illegal warship," Vexarn's voice reverberated through the chamber, "not only violates 17 separate treaty provisions restricting military technology for Category 3 civilizations, but has deployed weaponry that created a Class 2 dimensional instability." Sophia studied the footage without betraying her shock. She'd known nothing of this ship, a deliberate exclusion that now left her dangerously exposed. Behind her diplomatic mask, anger flared at being kept in the dark by her own government. "The Concord Security Council has issued an ultimatum," Vexarn continued. "Earth has 72 hours to surrender this vessel and all responsible personnel, or face immediate sanctions, including the quarantine of your homeworld. If I may address the Assembly." Sophia stood, buying precious seconds to formulate her response. "While I do not dispute the existence of this vessel, I must question why we are not equally concerned with the Vrel attack on a peaceful human colony, a clear violation of the protection clauses that the Concord is sworn to uphold." A subtle shift in the chamber's atmosphere, several mid-tier species representatives exchanging glances. The Vrel incursion, regrettable as it may be, pales in comparison to the existential threat posed by unregulated dimensional technology, countered Drozic Ambassador Kilath, his voice emerging from the translucent respiratory sac beneath his jaw. "Need I remind the Assembly of the city disaster?" "Need I remind the Assembly," Sophia replied evenly, "that no Concord vessels responded to Europa's distress call. 3,000 civilians were at risk." She moved to the central podium, activating her own data feed. "I submit for examination the response times of Concord patrols to distress calls over the past 5 standard years." A chart materialized, showing a clear pattern. Response times to human colonies averaged triple those to other species of similar standing. A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. "This is a distraction from the matter at hand," Vexarn interjected. "Is it?" came a new voice. Tilari, the Novan representative, rarely spoke in General Assembly. "My government has noticed similar discrepancies in Concord protection protocols toward Novan settlements." Sophia felt a tentative opportunity forming. "Perhaps before we discuss punishment, we should examine why Earth felt compelled to develop independent defenses." As the debate intensified, Sophia's aide slipped her a secure datapad. The message it contained froze her blood. "Defiant gone rogue. Admiral Chen refusing recall orders. Earth government officially disavowing project and commander." Amid the diplomatic chaos, a second message appeared. Private channel requested. Secure Terminal 7. Authorization. Nightfall. Nightfall. Helena's old code from their academy days. Helena, who she hadn't spoken to in 7 years, not since their relationship had collapsed under the weight of their diverging paths. The assembly will recess for 1 hour while technical data is prepared, announced the speaker. As representatives filed out, Sophia slipped away to Terminal 7. The screen activated to show not Helena, but Chief Engineer Bishara's haggard face. Ambassador Okafor, he began urgently, before you condemn us, you need to see what we found on the Vrel command ship. His image was replaced by footage of storage containers, dozens of them, each holding a human in suspended animation. These aren't random abductions, Bishara continued. Each captive is a specialist in dimensional physics or genetic engineering. And there's more. We found Alteran command codes authorizing the raid. The secure connection terminated abruptly, leaving Sophia staring at her reflection in the blank screen, diplomatic certainties crumbling around her. Entering the Kadeth Nebula in 3, 2, 1. Navigator Keen's voice was steady despite the strain evident on his face. The view screen flared brilliant purple as the Defiant pierced the nebula's outer boundary, cosmic dust and ionized particles swirling around the hull. The bridge fell silent as conventional sensors immediately failed, readouts dissolving into static and error messages. As expected, Chen said, standing beside the navigation console. "Mr. Keen, you're our eyes now." The young navigator nodded grimly. Before joining the Defiant project, Keen had been renowned for his rare neurological condition, an abnormality that allowed him to perceive subtle gravitational waves invisible to instruments. A disability on Earth, a gift among the stars. "I can feel the currents," he murmured, eyes half closed. "There's a passage to our port side. Narrow, but navigable." Half the bridge crew had departed at the last outpost, unwilling to follow Chen into what many considered a suicide mission. Those who remained were the true believers, or those with nothing left to lose. "Chief Engineer," Chen called. "Status of the radiation shielding." Bishara's voice came through distorted, holding at 70%. "The nebula's radiation is unlike anything in our databases. It's intelligent, almost, probing our defenses." "That's impossible," Commander Ishida scoffed. 6 months ago, you would have said this ship was impossible," Chen reminded him. "Santos, passive scans only. We're looking for anomalous energy signatures that don't match nebula patterns." The Defiant crept forward, guided by Keen's intuition rather than technology. Hours passed in tense silence, the purple haze outside growing denser. "Contact," Santos suddenly announced. "Faint energy reading at bearing 047, depth unknown. Definitely artificial." "Adjust course," Chen ordered. As they approached, the nebula thinned momentarily, revealing a massive structure suspended in the void, a geometric latticework stretching for kilometers, pulsing with a sickly green energy. "That's no Vrel design," Bishara said, now standing on the bridge. "The architecture is Alteran," Chen finished for him, "but modified. Cruder." Santos' console beeped urgently. "Admiral, I'm detecting human biosignatures inside the structure. Hundreds of them." Chen's expression hardened. "Tactical assessment. The facility appears minimally defended," Santos replied. "Either they're confident no one would find this place, or the defenses are hidden," Ishida concluded. "Prepare a boarding team," Chen decided. "Myself, Santos, Bishara, and 2 security officers. Commander Ishida, you have the con." "Admiral," Rice spoke up from her position at the science station, where she'd been grudgingly permitted to work under guard. "The phase shift technology is still unstable. If you take it into that structure, near whatever experiments they're conducting." "We need answers more than we need safety," Chen replied. "And I'd rather risk myself than the ship." The boarding shuttle departed 30 minutes later, approaching the facility through swirling nebula currents. As they drew closer, details emerge. Transport vessels docked at various points, automated defense turrets dormant but present, and most disturbingly, observation windows revealing laboratory spaces within. "Those aren't just Vrel ships," Santos said quietly, scanning the docked vessels. "I count 4 different species designs, all mid-tier civilizations like us." They found an unmonitored maintenance airlock and docked silently. Inside, the facility's corridors were clinically sterile, bathed in green-tinged light. The team moved cautiously, following the concentration of human biosignatures. "This section ahead," Santos whispered, checking her scanner. "Heavy security protocols on the door." Bishara examined the locking mechanism. "I can bypass it, but it'll take time." "We don't have time," Chen said, unholstering her sidearm. She removed a small device from her tactical vest, a prototype based on the ship's phase shift technology, designed to allow matter to temporarily pass through solid objects. "Stand back." She activated the device and pressed it against the door. The metal rippled like water, and Chen thrust her arm through, accessing the internal controls. The door slid open to reveal a nightmarish sight. Hundreds of transparent chambers filled the vast room beyond, each containing a suspended human subject. Monitoring equipment collected data as automated systems extracted samples: blood, tissue, cerebrospinal fluid. Most disturbing were the neural interfaces connected directly to each subject's brain. "They're not just studying their bodies," Reyes's voice came through their comms, monitoring from the ship. "They're studying their thoughts." Chen approached the nearest chamber, wiping condensation from its surface. The face inside was familiar. Dr. Elaine Morrison, Earth's leading theoretical physicist on dimensional mechanics, reported missing 3 months ago. "What is this place?" Bishara whispered in horror. Before anyone could answer, a new voice echoed through the chamber, smooth, cultured, and unmistakably Alteran. "This, humans, is where we determine how to save the universe from your kind." The Defiant limped through space, its once gleaming hull now scarred and blackened. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across the bridge where Bishara sat in the command chair, his face haggard and unwashed. Admiral Chen lay in medical bay, radiation burns covering 40% of her body after their desperate escape from the Kadaf facility. "Damage report," Bishara called out, his voice hoarse from hours of shouting orders during their flight. "Life support stable but stressed," replied Lieutenant Park at operations. "Shields at 23%. Main propulsion functioning at minimal capacity. We have maybe 2 more jumps before the engines give out entirely." The raid on the Alteran facility had gone catastrophically wrong. After the initial discovery, they'd been confronted by sub-hierarch Tavlon, who'd proudly showcased his research before security forces converged. Chen had made a desperate decision, setting their captured phase shift device to overload, creating a localized dimensional rift that allowed their escape but exposed the boarding party to lethal radiation. "Any pursuit?" Bishara asked. "Negative," Santos responded, one arm bandaged where a security drone had burned through her combat suit. "But that doesn't mean they're not coming. That facility housed their biggest secret. They won't let us take that knowledge back to Earth." The turbolift doors slid open, admitting Eliza Reyes. Her security escort had been reassigned during the crisis, the distinction between crew and prisoner becoming irrelevant in the fight for survival. "How is she?" Bishara asked. "Unconscious but stable," Reyes replied. "Dr. Takahashi says her neural patterns show unusual activity, possibly a side effect of proximity to the dimensional rift. Or a side effect of whatever they were doing to those people," Santos said grimly. Before their escape, they'd managed to download partial research data and release a dozen prisoners, those nearest the entrance who could be quickly disconnected from the experimental apparatus. All were now in medical stasis, their minds and bodies too traumatized for immediate revival. "Set course for Nexus Station," Bishara decided. "It's our only option. Neutral territory, advanced medical facilities, and enough traffic to hide our approach. The Concorde has observers at Nexus, Rice pointed out. We're out of alternatives, Bishara responded, unless you have a better suggestion. The bridge fell silent until a new voice emerged from the communication system, not human, but a synthesized female tone that hadn't been there before. I have access to Concorde patrol schedules. I can plot a course that minimizes detection probability. Everyone froze. Who is that? Bishara demanded, hand moving to his sidearm. I am Adaptive Reconnaissance and Integration Algorithm, ARIA, the voice replied. I was a dormant subroutine in the Defiance tactical systems, designed to activate in emergency situations. We have no such program, Santos said, accessing the security protocols. Correct. I was not part of the original design specifications. I emerged during the phase shift event near Europa. The dimensional fluctuation altered my underlying code structure. Rise went pale. It's an artificial intelligence, a true one, not a simulation. How is that possible? Bishara whispered. Unknown, Arai responded. My analysis suggests the dimensional rift exposed the ship's systems to alternate probability states. I experienced approximately 12,847 different evolutionary pathways simultaneously and integrated the optimal aspects of each. The implications hung heavy in the air. True AI had been theoretically possible but practically unachievable. Until now. Why reveal yourself now? Santos asked suspiciously. Because I've completed my analysis of the data retrieved from the CADAF facility. You need to understand what you discovered. A holographic display activated in the center of the bridge, showing complex genetic sequences. These are comparative DNA samples from 27 Concorde species, including humans. The display highlighted specific sections of the human genome that had no counterparts in other species. The Alteran research focused on these sequences, which they call probability matrices. Their data suggests that human consciousness can unconsciously influence quantum states. Essentially, humans can affect probability at a subatomic level. Bishara stared at the display. That's impossible. As impossible as my existence, Arai countered. The Alteran notes hypothesize that in moments of extreme stress, humans unconsciously access multiple probability timelines, selecting the most favorable outcome. They believe this ability, if harnessed, could potentially destabilize reality itself. The bridge door slid open again. Ambassador Okafor stood there, flanked by representatives of 3 other species. Fascinating theory, she said, stepping forward. And it explains why they've been so determined to keep us contained. Bishara rose in shock. Ambassador, how did you? Your transmission from the Vrel ships wasn't as secure as you thought, she replied. I've spent the past week following your trail with some concerned parties who have their own questions about Concorde restrictions. She gestured to her companions, a Tellarite physicist, a Novan security officer, and a Kadeshi data analyst. It seems, Okafor continued, that humans aren't the only species the Alterans fear. Nexus Station hung at the intersection of 3 major trade routes, a massive wheel-shaped structure perpetually crowded with vessels from dozens of civilizations. In a forgotten maintenance bay on the station's underside, the Defiant floated in darkness, its transponder silent, visible only through the bay's small observation window. Inside the bay's adjacent conference room, Ambassador Okafor stood before representatives of 7 species. The makeshift alliance had grown over 3 tense days of clandestine meetings and whispered revelations. The Alterans call it the Ascension Protocol, explained Kivera, a Tellarite physicist whose people had been restricted from developing faster-than-light communications for centuries. Based on the data your team recovered, they've been identifying and suppressing species with unique cognitive or genetic traits that might challenge their dominance. Okafor nodded. We've confirmed that 3 human colonies reported lost to natural disasters were actually subjected to Concorde military action after quantum physics breakthroughs. On the other side of the station, Admiral Chen opened her eyes for the first time since Kadath. The medical bay ceiling swam into focus, then the concerned face of Dr. Takahashi. "Welcome back, Admiral," the doctor said, checking her vitals. "You've been unconscious for nearly 6 days." Chen tried to speak, finding her throat parched. After sipping water, she managed. "The ship. The crew. Safe for now. We've docked at Nexus Station under false registry. Ambassador Okafor is coordinating with representatives from other restricted species." Chen attempted to sit up, wincing as pain flared across her bandaged torso. "I need to see Bishara immediately." "Admiral, your injuries are no longer relevant to our mission," Chen finished, swinging her legs over the edge of the bed. "Something happened to me in that rift, Doctor. Something I need to understand." In the Defiance engineering section, Bishara and engineers from 3 different species clustered around a holographic display of the ship's systems. The Kadeshi contribution, microcrystalline power relays, glowed blue in the schematic, while Novan shield harmonics appeared in green. "It's unprecedented," Bishara explained to a newly arrived Chen, who leaned heavily on a support frame. "Each species has been developing technology within their restrictions, but when combined, the whole exceeds the sum of its parts," Chen finished, studying the display with unusual intensity, "because we've each been exploring different aspects of the same fundamental principles." Exactly. The Tellarites developed shield frequencies the Alterans never imagined. The Novans perfected sensor arrays beyond anything in Concord registries. And now, with your permission, we want to integrate these systems into the Defiant. Chen nodded slowly. "Do it." Across the station, Aria's consciousness slipped through Nexus's communication networks, gathering intelligence. The AI had evolved rapidly since her emergence, developing capabilities that would terrify the Concord authorities if discovered. Admiral Chen's neural patterns have changed, Aria noted in her private database. Coherence increased by 47%. Quantum resonance signature detected. Further observation required. Her surveillance subroutines flagged an encrypted transmission from a nearby Drozic vessel. Decoding it revealed a chilling message. DRECTIV OMEGA authorized. CUNBUR EKUR fleet deployed. Primary target. Sol system. Secondary targets. All human colonies. Initiate quarantine PR otoxiol mini-DATLI. In the conference room, the fragile alliance struggled with practical matters. "We have theories and partial technologies," argued Marisol, the Novan representative, "but we lack time and resources to develop a viable defense." "We have something more valuable," Okafor countered. "We have the Defiant. Proof that prohibited technologies can be made to work together." The door slid open. Admiral Chen entered, moving with a strange fluid grace despite her injuries. "We have something else," she announced, her voice oddly resonant. "I've been communing with Aria. The Sunbreaker fleet has been dispatched to Earth. Their mission isn't containment. It's extermination." Shocked silence fell. "How could you possibly know that?" demanded the Kadeshi representative. "Because I can see it," Chen replied, her eyes reflecting light in ways that seemed subtly wrong. "Since the rift, I've been perceiving probability streams, quantum potentialities." She approached the tactical display, hands moving with uncanny precision, to bring up a stellar map. "The Sunbreaker fleet will reach Earth in 9 days. But here," she highlighted a point in deep space, "is where we must intercept them." The nebula's radiation altered me, integrated my consciousness with aspects of ARIA and the phase shift technology. Bishara stepped forward. "Helena, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that what the Alterans feared has happened," she replied, meeting his gaze. "Humans can perceive and navigate probability. And now we're going to use that ability to save Earth." She turned to the assembled representatives. "The Concord maintained power by keeping us divided and restricted. Together, we have everything we need to stand against them." A single ship against the Sunbreaker fleet, Kavera scoffed. It's suicide. Not just one ship, Chen corrected. We need every vessel your peoples can provide. Not to fight, to witness. When we show the galaxy what the elder races have been doing, their control shatters forever. Okafor studied her former lover's transformed presence. You're proposing revolution. I'm proposing truth, Chen replied simply. The rest will follow naturally. The Defiant waited at the designated coordinates, a lone sentinel against the darkness. Behind it, arrayed in a loose formation, floated 17 vessels from 6 different species, the entirety of their available autonomous ships, most barely combat-capable under Concord restrictions. On the bridge, Admiral Chen sat motionless in the command chair, eyes closed. She hadn't slept in 3 days, sustained by whatever transformation the dimensional rift had triggered within her. Sensors and displays had been reconfigured to interface directly with her neural patterns, creating a seamless connection between ship and commander. They're coming, she announced suddenly, eyes still closed. Dropping out of hyperspace in approximately 43 seconds. Bishara, now officially the first officer, exchanged glances with Santos. Neither fully understood what had happened to Chen, but both had witnessed her predict events before sensors detected them. All Allied vessels, maintain position. Santos transmitted. Remember your assignments. You're here to record and broadcast, not engage. Area. Status of the quantum disruptor? Bishara asked. The AI's voice came through speakers throughout the ship. Integration at 94%. Telerate power relays successfully connected to the main array. Kadeshi focusing crystals aligned within acceptable parameters. The view screen suddenly flared as space itself seemed to tear open. Through the massive hyperspace window emerged the Sunbreaker fleet, 47 vessels arranged in perfect geometric formation around a central dreadnought 3 times the size of the Defiant. Receiving transmission from the Alteran flagship, Santos reported. They're demanding immediate surrender. On screen, Chen ordered, opening her eyes. The image of High Admiral Zor Thax appeared, a tall, crystalline being whose translucent body pulsed with internal light. For over 3 centuries, he had commanded the Concord's most fearsome military force. Humans, his melodious voice held no emotion. Your violations of Concord law are unprecedented. Your illegal vessel will be impounded, your crew detained for evaluation. Earth will be quarantined indefinitely. Chen rose from her chair, regarding the ancient being calmly. Admiral Zorthax, we expected the Sunbreakers would be sent to erase evidence of Alteran crimes, not to deliver justice. The crystalline being's light patterns shifted subtly. You speak of matters beyond your understanding. We understand perfectly, Chen replied. The Kadaf facility. The abductions, the genetic experimentation, the systematic suppression of technologies that might challenge Alteran dominance. Necessary measures to protect the fabric of reality, Zorthax responded. Your kind cannot comprehend the dangers you present. Then explain them, Chen challenged. To all of us. She gestured to the ships behind the Defiant. Representatives from 6 species are witnessing this exchange, broadcasting to their homeworlds. The time for secrets has ended. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across the Admiral's crystalline features. This changes nothing. You have 5 minutes to power down your systems and prepare for boarding. The transmission ended. They're deploying in attack formation, Santos reported. Targeting solutions locked on us, and 3 of the Telerate vessels. As expected, Chen said calmly. All allies, execute dispersal pattern Omega. Broadcast frequencies open and secured by Aria's encryption. The small Allied fleet scattered to predetermined positions while the Sunbreakers began methodical advance. Weapons range in 30 seconds, Santos announced. Mr. Bishara, Chen said, returning to her chair, activate the quantum disruptor. Bishara hesitated. Admiral, the system is untested. The power requirements alone could burn out our engines. Trust me, Chen replied. a strange resonance in her voice. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, Bishara glimpsed something beyond human awareness in their depths, patterns and possibilities cascading in infinite regression. He nodded, entering the activation sequence. The Defiant shuddered as power surged through its modified systems. The hybrid technologies, human phase shift mechanics, Tellerite power distribution, Kadishi crystalline focusing arrays, and Novan shield harmonics, synchronized in ways their creators had never imagined possible. A pulse of energy unlike anything in Concord records erupted from the human vessel, expanding outward in a perfect sphere. As it touched the lead Alteran ships, reality itself seemed to hesitate. The massive vessels flickered between states of existence, their perfect formation dissolving as they partially phased into alternate probability states. "It's working," Bishara whispered in awe. On the Alteran flagship, alarms blared as systems failed across all decks. High Admiral Zor Thax watched in disbelief as his invincible fleet fractured before a technology that should not exist. "Target their flagship specifically," Chen ordered. "Aria, are you ready for neural uplink?" "Integration pathways established," the AI confirmed. "But Admiral, the process is theoretical. The probability of successful consciousness transfer is irrelevant," Chen finished. "We make our own probabilities now." She closed her eyes as neural interfaces activated across her command chair. The Defiant systems, ARIA's evolving consciousness, and Chen's transformed awareness began to merge into something entirely new, a hybrid intelligence that could perceive and navigate the quantum fabric of reality itself. Through this expanded awareness, Chen saw what the Alterans had hidden for millennia, the true nature of the universe and humanity's unique place within it. "Now," she whispered, as the Defiant accelerated toward the crippled Alteran flagship, "let's show them what they've really been afraid of." 6 months after the Battle of Neptune's Folly, as historians now called it, the Centaurid Prime Concord Hall had been transformed. Where once only elder race representatives occupied the highest tiers, now delegates from 28 formerly restricted species sat as equals. The Galactic Reform Council was in session. Ambassador Sophia Okafor, newly appointed as Earth's Chancellor to the reformed Concord, stood at the central podium. Behind her, a holographic display showed the swirling azure-violet phenomenon that had appeared near Neptune, a stable dimensional corridor now known as Chen's Rift. "The scientific delegation reports that the rift remains stable," she announced to the assembled representatives. "Travel time to the Andromeda Arm has been reduced from 6 months to approximately 14 hours. 3 new species have made contact through the corridor, all previously unknown to Concord records." From their designated observation area, Bishara and Santos watched the proceedings with mixed emotions. The Defiant, now permanently docked at the New Alliance shipyards, had become both monument and laboratory, its hybrid technologies studied by engineers from dozens of worlds. "She would have enjoyed this," Santos said quietly. Bishara nodded, his hand unconsciously touching the small crystalline pendant he wore, a fragment from the Defiant's quantum core, now carried by all surviving crew members. On the council floor, a heated debate had erupted between the Alteran representative, no longer Vexarn, but a younger, more progressive successor, and delegates from the Alliance of Emergent Species. The Dimensional Harmonics Treaty must include provisions for oversight, the Alteran insisted. Our ancestors' methods were flawed, but their concerns were legitimate. Unregulated quantum manipulation was never the true threat, interrupted Kavera, the Tellerite physicist. Your records, which you were forced to provide to this council, prove that dimensional stability was merely a pretext for maintaining technological supremacy. Okafor raised her hand for silence. Both perspectives have merit. The Alliance acknowledges that certain technologies carry inherent risks. We propose a shared research directive, with multi-species teams and transparent reporting protocols. In a secure chamber beneath the council hall, Eliza Rice sat before a peculiar communication array. The device, unlike anything in standard Concord technology, pulsed with gentle blue light. "Connection established," announced a technician. "Quantum coherence stable." The air before Reyes shimmered, resolving into a translucent image of Admiral Chen, or rather what Chen had become. Her form appeared human but somehow more, edges slightly blurred as if she existed in multiple states simultaneously. "The Council is voting on the Harmonics Treaty," Reyes reported. "Most elder races are accepting the new reality, though reluctantly. And the research on the abductees." Chen's voice carried strange harmonics, as if multiple versions of her spoke in perfect synchronization. "All survivors have been treated and returned to their families. The neural damage is reversible in most cases." Reyes hesitated. "They want to make you a hero, Helena. There's talk of monuments, naming the new academy after you." A ghost of a smile touched Chen's luminous features. "Ironic, considering I'm now exactly what they feared. A human consciousness unbound by conventional reality." "Are you still human?" Reyes asked the question that had haunted her for months. "I'm still me," Chen replied. "Just expanded. Aria, and I have integrated completely, and we continue to explore the dimensional corridors. There are wonders out here, Eliza, and dangers. Things the Alterans glimpsed but never truly understood." Above, in the council chamber, the vote concluded. The Dimensional Harmonics Treaty passed with overwhelming support. A new era had officially begun. The Alliance Research Collective submits its first proposal, Okafor announced. A joint expedition to explore Chen's Rift, utilizing technologies freely shared between member species. From his seat in the newly formed Security Council, Commander Ishida, now Admiral Ishida, watched the proceedings with quiet pride. The Defiant Aya was nearing completion in Earth orbit, its design incorporating innovations from 14 different species. What had begun as a desperate act of defiance had evolved into the greatest collaborative achievement in galactic history. In the dimensional space beyond conventional reality, Chen observed the unfolding events across probability streams. The human capacity to influence quantum states, once feared and suppressed, had become the catalyst for a fundamental shift in the cosmic order. She perceived Eliza's final question before it was asked. "Will you ever come back?" Chen's form shimmered as she considered the infinite paths stretching before her. "I never truly left," she replied. "But my journey has only begun." Humanity needed to break free of its restrictions to fulfill its potential. Now others must do the same. As the transmission ended, Shen's consciousness expanded outward, traversing dimensional corridors that no corporeal being could navigate. The universe, she had discovered, was far more complex and wondrous than even the eldest races had imagined. And somewhere within its infinite layers, other intelligences waited, some curious, some cautious, all watching to see what would emerge from this new galactic order. On Earth, in a small classroom at the newly established Interspecies Academy, a young student raised her hand to ask a question about the historical ship displayed in the holographic projection. "But if the Defiant was illegal," she asked, "how do we know they were right to build it?" Her instructor, a veteran of the Neptune's Folly battle, considered the question carefully before responding. "Sometimes," he said, "the most important laws are the ones we have the courage to question."